Well, good morning, everybody. Scott Fisher with Senior Resource Connectors. We are in season 3 of our webinar series featuring our experts and our dedicated, trusted coalition members. For many of you that have watched or been a part of this, been part of our audience in the past, Connectors was formed a little over 3 years ago to be a consolidated coalition of trusted, vetted resources that stand with families as they are experiencing the challenges of aging. Typically, their parents or their loved ones are feeling the rough spots of the aging journey. And all of us that are a part of Senior Resource Connectors are dedicated to walk with families, stand with them in particular ways that help them address and work their way through some of these challenges. And so today, I've been wanting to do this one for a while. We met you guys, God, Robert and Randy, how many months ago now? And
I think it was April, yeah. May.
Yeah. All right. Well, Randy and Robert Sobel of the WeedWorks joined us earlier this year, and they brought in a conversation to the table that we haven't had before. And so I've been excited about bringing them to you and highlighting what they do and how their world of working with cannabis products has been such a benefit to so many families. And so the world is a-changing, ain't it?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And we're happy to be a part of it.
You guys, thank you for being here. Good to see you guys today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, we're very happy to be here.
We're very happy.
Well, I usually like to start in a place that maybe there's a story, maybe there's a person that illustrates for everybody what it is that you do. So here's this idea. You guys do education around cannabis and the effectiveness of cannabis. Okay, cool. How about tell us about somebody that maybe is now benefiting from experiencing your expertise?
Okay, we can do that. I think it's also important to understand like how WeedWorks started and why WeedWorks started. And it was one of those success stories.
Mm.
So my mother had MS and she had chronic nerve pain from MS. And she was on a massive amount of opioids and cocktail of narcotics. And in about 2015, her decline really her health began to decline a lot. And we started to notice that nothing was changing with her pain other than her memory was starting to deteriorate.
And she was on fentanyl as well as other opioids. So
I can name them. Fentanyl was being one of them. Anyways, so I knew that medical marijuana was going to become legalized in 2016. So in 2015, when my mom's health was really declining, I spent that entire year trying to educate myself and my parents about cannabis and all the benefits, because I knew I'd have a really small window when it became legalized, and that was the only way I was going to be able to convince my parents to try something new. And at the time, my parents were snowbirds. We bounced between Arizona and Illinois. So my education was really between both states. I was educated in both Illinois and Arizona, and because the doctors wanted to take my mom and put her in rehab to get her off of all those narcotics. She's 75 years old and she was in that position because of those doctors. So I was introduced to an incredible woman here in Arizona, and she helped safely guide my mom off of all those narcotics and fully onto cannabis by the end of 2016. And we have not been back to the emergency room once. And prior to that, mom was going to the ER twice a month for visits, either getting more medication on top of what she was on, or they said, there's nothing we can do. So it completely.
And share a little bit about some of the complex health conditions related with MS. I mean, you got pain, you got all the emotional stuff, talk to me about that. That's a lot to be able to manage all this time.
It's a lot. And every time we go to a doctor, they'd see the depression coming through, the anxiety would be coming through, the lack of sleep, the pain, how it affected my father, how it impacted the entire family. It was stressful. And even through that process, nobody knew how to work with my mom, who was suffering and was using cannabis. So my mom had 24/7 home care. She had hospice care. She would, if she got a UTI or something would happen, she'd end up in the hospital. We'd end up back at square one with the medication because we couldn't use cannabis when she would go into a federally funded organization, you know, hospitals, nursing homes, all of that. So I was the one bouncing back between Illinois and Arizona, trying to bridge that gap and help them. So that's when Rob and I really started to see the need. We started to see the need because medical marijuana, when that became legal, they had customer service. You could go into the dispensaries, and most people that worked in a dispensary were
Mhm.
patients themselves. So they understood the therapeutic benefits of cannabis and how cannabis was medicine. But when medical marijuana shifted in 2020 and it became recreationally legal, the medical market changed. And it was in conjunction with the pandemic. But that shift left that layer of support and help. There was a gap. There was nowhere for people to go for that education. So while I was helping my parents,
Right.
I was helping, but there
Right.
wasn't other people there, and we could see
Right.
time and time again the need for this population: sleep, anxiety,
Well,
pain.
you just drilled it and you touched on it, you guys. What the journey what that meant to all the rest of you guys in the family. You know, when someone gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or any long-term care condition, it's a family systems issue.
Sure.
That's what you just said. And this has helped you manage her condition so that the family system is also, you know, much more.
Absolutely, that is the
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah. Wow. Which is our goal as an organization with connectors. And this is exactly why we felt like you guys were such a great fit, because you are the education that you're providing, instilling, sharing with those customers, clients, guiding people to cannabis for maybe the first time. Can you imagine 30 years ago trying to tell this story to the world? Like, we've come a long way. I mean,
We've
good, in a good way.
definitely come a long way, and I've definitely seen in the past decade
Yeah.
positive steps. There needs to be a lot more steps, but the door has been opened, and WeedWorks is here to knock it completely open.
Like as an example, I think it was 10 years ago, I thought I saw a report, like 10 years ago, you know, seniors 65 and older, I think 0.5% were using cannabis as medicine. So it was back in 15, roughly. Now, as of 2022, latest number is around 8%. So, you know, so the seniors are starting to hear more and more that cannabis can really help them with their various ailments.
Yeah.
It's the issue is, how do you get from I'm interested, I think I want to try it, to actually using it?
Yeah.
And make sure that that process is a successful process.
Yeah.
And that's really where we come into play, is to help bridge that gap and help that with that process.
And so you have seniors that are way overprescribed pain medicine,
Correct.
way overprescribed benzodiazepines. I'm telling you, you know it. Broken hips are everywhere from stuff like that, right? Cannabis has to be considered a medical alternative for those medicines. I mean, if I was a family member, I'd be going like, how can this maybe help mom? And I'm not even talking about people that have agitation and behaviors with Alzheimer's, which is another whole category.
That's a whole podcast that we can talk about.
No, I know. And I'd love to just set aside another time with you guys just for that one. But if we'll just talk about this as an alternative to throwing pain medicine and benzos at people.
Well, you mentioned hips. I can tell you a story about a hip replacement surgery, and it was my best friend's father. He's 80 years old. He's from New York. He's a pharmacist. He knows very well what that medication does to his body, and he wanted something different. So I sat with Poppy, and we came up with a care plan to find different ways to help him sleep, because he needed sleep, to help his pain, and to manage any issues with appetite, mood, to get him through this experience. And it was life-changing for him. It was so great to watch him get the relief he needed without getting the slew of side effects that come from all those narcotics and sleep medications. Now, I'm not trying to say that medication is bad. I'm just saying that cannabis is a healthy alternative for those who seek that healthy alternative. Cannabis needs to be seen more and more as medicine. And we can tell you story after story of success. We've had it with our own family members.
Here, I'll give you another example real quick. My brother has this condition called trigeminal neuralgia. It's one of the most painful conditions on earth, basically. You know, it's a nerve issue that shoots down his face. It's almost like having an open nerve that's just firing all the time. And it's extremely painful. So he's actually having surgery at Mayo Clinic here. And he was talking to the neurosurgeon. And the neurosurgeon asked him, what have you done? Have you found anything that you've gotten relief? I mean, he's on medication, it helps somewhat, but like immediate relief when it's really painful. And he's like, actually, this type of cannabis called RSO, it's short for Rich Simpson oil. Okay, it's heavily concentrated. It's the most potent cannabis that you could get.
Medical cannabis.
Medical cannabis that you could get. And he puts it on in his cheek where he's having the pain, and he got relief for like 2 to 4 hours.
It's
total.
topical.
Yeah,
Is it an oil or a paste or an application?
It's an oil. It's a thicker concentrate type of oil. And then a neurosurgeon's like, oh my God, we've never heard that before. And he's like, we want to write a white paper on this so we can use it and prescribe it. So, you know, so just giving you another example of how cannabis can really be used as medicine.
Well, you guys tell me how the name WeedWorks came about then. I mean,
so cute story. Was I was in town for one of those family emergencies. Like I said, we bounced between Chicago and Arizona. And my mom's caregiver was filling out all of her medication on the box, and she couldn't fit marijuana. And she looked at me and she said, can I just write weed? And I said, sure, weed works. And my mother was across the room and had just taken her weed, and she was a little bit high. And she goes, yeah, weed works. And we all started to laugh. And I looked at my kid, my son was with me, my son Ryan, and I said, that's it. That's the company. WeedWorks. Life is good. Don't worry, be happy. It is very simple. That's the message. WeedWorks.
that's a fabulous story. That I'm not so sure I heard that previously, but that's good. Thanks, Mom.
True story. So since 2018, this has been in the works.
Yeah.
I mean, since I got my education in 2015, but in 2018, when that moment happened, that light bulb, and then all the trips to the hospitals, the assisted living communities, the home care agencies, you know, every time my mother would have a different emergency, which was frequent, we'd have to go and find a place for her to stay temporarily. So if we were at a rehab community, we were at an assisted living community, the first question I would ask is what their policies were about patients that use medical cannabis. And I'm not kidding, 99% of the time it ended up discussing their ailments, what was going on with their family members and how I could help them. Or there's residents here that could use your help. Would you mind talking to them? Which of course I said, no, I would be happy to talk to anyone, but that also showed me how we can help people and how we can create that space, because I started my working career doing marketing and sales for a home healthcare company. I have spent over 30 years in the senior side of senior workspace.
Educating all of us about different various things.
Always educating. So that's why I talked to Rob and I'm like, why can't we apply the same concept and create a program and go into the senior community and help to educate so that those suffering from sleep pain, it's so therapeutic and they're scared. We got to help them get over that stigma.
So there's obviously an opportunity to speak to organized, structured, corporate senior living communities. And goodness, Phoenix is one of the meccas for such.
Sure.
Yes.
But
definitely for sure.
For every person that lives in assisted living, there's another 100 people that don't live in assisted living, or more. We are a community that has 100,000 80-year-olds in it already, you guys. 250,000 75-year-olds.
Right.
1 million people 65 already. So you're talking about a massive number of aging people.
Yep.
So what's the barrier to get to them? How do we get the message to them that this should be considered and taken seriously as an option for their healthcare?
It's an excellent question. And that's literally what we're doing right now. We're finding every possible way to get that message out. So joining every type of senior connecting networking group, like your incredible organization. So we're doing that. Same thing on the marijuana cannabis side. We are also trying to educate the healthcare world. So we are connecting to different home care and hospice companies, and we are trying to talk to them. In fact, we're in discussion with one of them so that we can do a podcast or a Zoom like we're doing with you, Scott, to all of their family members. We're doing senior expos, we're doing resources.
There's new things that we haven't heard of until we got into the space, but 60+ like primary care physician groups, where they're really focused on overall health of that age community and providing programs in their clinics, for them. So we're doing education there as well. So we're just looking at every avenue to reach out to get directly to basically that population. Because sometimes you have the barrier entry. Sometimes the barrier is at the assisted living and independent living. It's those people, the activity directors, they're busy doing what we're doing. We're trying to get the education, but sometimes maybe they don't believe in it, or maybe they're just too busy, but that is a slight barrier for us to try to get directly to that population.
And how the primary care doctors and some of these physician practices, how do they take you, or freestanding outpatient rehab centers? They're all over town, right?
Well, it's a mixed bag.
They're dealing with pain constantly.
Correct. It's definitely a mixed bag, and it's definitely a wall we're trying to knock down. So slowly but surely, we get that wall knocked down. We created these events. We have partnered with our program with the dispensary Curaleaf, and we started off with Curaleaf in Scottsdale, for example. They've been great. They're really trying to help bridge that gap with the medical market and have people know that they can come to a safe place to get their medicine. So Rob and I created what we're calling WeedWorks Wednesdays. So on a Wednesday, anyone can come into the store and sit with us, and we can help match their ailments to the right products. So not only are we going out into the senior community and educating them, but then they know that they can come to us and we can help guide them to the medication and alternatives that they're looking for whatever it is that ails them. So that's another avenue that's been super successful. You guys are doing, how I got to you is because you're somewhat no different than us as your connectors, right? And we've discussed that we are the decision makers right now. We're stuck in this generation where we're, raising our children and we're helping our parents. And more often than not, when Rob and I are out talking to people and we're talking to seniors, we'll hear, my kid told me to try a gummy. I can't sleep. And they said, stop with all the medication, Mom. So the kids need to have that education so that they can help guide their parents, because it's funny, we're hearing from the seniors that they are learning more and their kids are more resistant. So their kids are like, wait a second. So
we're not so sure about
not so sure about this, Mom. Before you go ahead and, take a brownie, please talk to someone.
I think there's a lot of seniors, my mom and others included. Hey, there's some that are ultra conservative. They're never going to change. I think there's a large swath of those folks that don't feel good. Medicine isn't the answer all the time for every ailment. We have prescribers throwing multiple piles of medicine on people. And if there's a way to naturally utilize the cannabis product and get a desired benefit or even a better benefit, amen to that.
Yeah, it's funny because in our presentations too, when we talk about like all the prescription medication, like those commercials when you read like the labels when you get your prescription, how many adverse reactions or side effects you could possibly have, and they're talking really fast for like a minute.
They talk really fast overall that could cause death, could cause hypertension, could cause.
Right, like cannabis has very few, and they're all mostly in your head. You get paranoid about stuff. That's mostly everything that happens with cannabis or as an adverse.
Yeah, the side effects of cannabis are far less detrimental than the narcotics that we have people on.
And one of our new connectors partners is a plug for Bennett, has a prescription product that lubricates the inside of the mouth to help prevent the cotton mouth that might happen for some product. And I'm super excited to bring Bennett onto the show and have him talk about that aspect. Have you met Bennett?
Yes. We met Bennett. I think his product is incredible and what they're doing to help people. He connected us to the ALS Foundation, and we're talking to the ALS Foundation because like we said, just like the Alzheimer's Association, Parkinson's, anyone that we can help, that we see there's an alternative to what's ailing them. We're trying to bridge that gap. We're working very hard to talk to the veterans because it's helping so many people with PTSD and what
Yeah.
ails them. So we're getting ourselves in front of every different possible type of group we can right now.
Bravo.
Medicine, right? And we're just getting that
Cannabis
message.
is medicine.
And we're just getting that message out as much as we possibly can.
Awesome. I'm proud of you guys. Hey, before we get going, we're going to have to wrap this up. I knew this would be fast when we got started. I knew.
Well, here's a really good way to remember us right away.
WeedWorks.
WeedWorks.
You want to take this, Rob?
Yeah, so, growing and expanding, not just in Arizona, but other states.
Yeah.
When we get the word out, and especially with dispensaries or other senior associations, they hear what they're doing. We've talked to a lot of people, especially in the cannabis business. They originally got into the business because they saw it as a tool to really help people, right? As medicine, right? And then time goes on and you're into it because you got revenue challenges, whatever the case is. So now here we come along and we bring back that passion that they originally had, and they want to do everything they can to, extend this program and with us, right? And work with us on this program. So, we've already talked to dispensaries like in Missouri, they have like 14 dispensaries. They want to bring us out there. So, so vision over the next year or two is really growth and expansion.
Yeah, it's just the most underserved community when it comes to cannabis, and it's the community that's really looking for this help. And we figured a way to create this space and fill it and help this community. And that is our mission, to spread the mission about cannabis being seen as medicine.
Awesome. Rob and Randi Sobel, WeedWorks. This has been awesome to get to know you guys a little bit this year. I knew this would lead us into more things, and super grateful to you for the work you're doing in the community. When you're doing work that's missional, you're in for the long haul. You're doing what you're doing. You're knocking down doors. You're carving out the forest that hasn't ever been carved out before. And I love people like you guys that take that seriously, and thanks for making our community and our group better. So we really appreciate you guys.
Thank you for having
thank
us.
you so
We're
much, Scott.
super grateful for this opportunity and
Yeah.
for getting connected with you and Stacy and Senior Resource Connectors.
It has been the best thing to get connected with you
Yeah.
guys.
Thanks so
Honestly.
much. You guys take care. We will see you on the next episode of the Senior Resource Connectors podcast. Take care, guys.
Great. Thank you.
Take care, Scott.
Bye-bye.